We're going to bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We have been going all morning. We had work and lunch, and we also had a non-meeting meeting with our legal staff and staff employees to go over employment-related matters. So we're ready to go for the afternoon session. We're going to take a break so that we can go use the facilities. We'll be in recess for 5 or 10 minutes. We'll come back here. right, we're going to call the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order, and we're going to have a little public comment period at the beginning, and we'd like to introduce the community and everyone to our new city engineer. So, Darren, you want to do that?
I sure do. Come on up, Dan.
Number one and you know, you're working for 1 out of 10 in the United States right there. So now you know what shoes you got to fill. All right, go.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Darren Schultz, Public Works Director for the record. I want to introduce, this is Dan Stuckey. He is our new city engineer. Today is his first day. So he spent the majority of his day here in front of you and witnessing how things really happen. And we'll see if he comes back tomorrow. Ooh.
It's a great experience to see the process and all that. So yeah, it's been great.
You want to tell us? No, you got to go ahead.
Yeah, so Dan comes to us from the private side. He's from Northern Nevada. This area has been up here for about 10 or 12 years, and the consulting side. So he's done capital projects, although he's never worked directly within the government. He's worked for the government as a consultant, so he has that background. A very broad background. He's done a lot of master planning efforts, which is really going to help us in some of the things we want to do within, as you guys are aware, within our utilities. So that's going to be great, and we're very, very excited to have Dan. So,
first day on the job, we gave you $10 million to spend.
Yeah, like that, right? That's great.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, family, and stuff like that? And,
Yeah.
And, you know, where you live and all that, and just kind of have a stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm originally from Spokane, Washington, and I went out to the University of Kansas for my schooling and met my wife there, who is from Truckee originally. So I did what she told me to do and moved back here. So I am a skier. I did. Yeah. So it's been a great experience. I've been here since 2006. And like Darren said, I started out in land development, moved over more towards working for a large consulting firm doing a lot of public works projects. So I've been doing that for the last 11 years. And then this is a great opportunity, and I'm really excited to work with Darren and the rest of the staff there. And I have my family, I have 2 young daughters, 2 and 5. So. Where do you live? South Reno. It's actually a really quick, easy drive to get here from where I live, so it's been nice.
asset management, Stephanie here runs that for us, as well as Matt, and so Dan will be directly involved with that in terms of citywide asset management. So we're kind of going through division by division and department by department, and right now we're still gathering a bunch of information and putting programs together. So.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you.
I'm not sure we can have another Jayhawk in town.
Where's the other Jayhawk? Do we have? Oh, very cool. Oh, okay. Awesome.
So when you come testify, remember that.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
You'll get you a vote. All right. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Welcome to Carson City.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to take up, this is the Planning Commission. We have to appoint 2 members, and we had 1 drop out. Who?
So we had Oswald Tinsley drop out, Mr. Mayor. We're going to take the remaining applicants in the order that they are on the agenda. So first up will be Candace, and then I'll get the other 2 gentlemen when you get to them.
Very good. Hi, Candace. Where's Candace? Come on up. Good afternoon to you. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good. How's that planning degree you got?
Always working.
You dusted off a little bit. That's good, huh?
Right.
Good, good. Why don't you tell us, you know, we're going to do things a little bit differently this time. You know, we're going to probably drill down a little deeper in terms of some planning issues as we go through it. We're going to try and ask the same questions in the same drill of all the people, but, you know, it'll be just a little bit more probably intense than the past. So intense is probably the wrong word, more in-depth maybe. Mm-hmm. So I want to start off by asking you a couple general questions. One is, you know, why do you want to do this? And then while you're answering that, you can think of this. I want to know what you think about planning in Carson City, the history of planning in Carson City, and what you would have done different, if anything.
I moved to Carson City in 2012,
and was fortunate to be appointed to the school board from June 2013 to December of 2014. Enjoyed it very much, and I would like to get involved as a citizen-appointed body again. I enjoy working with the community. I enjoy doing anything I can to participate and help out with community efforts in Carson City. I enjoy being a resident here, and believe I can bring some good skill sets and good knowledge to the position of the Planning Commission. What was the second question, Mayor Crowell?
Well, the second question is, just tell me what you think about prior planning. What you think about prior planning, things that have gone on, what's your take on how we've done in planning, urban planning, over, say, the past 5 or 10 years, or, since you've been here, since 2012, or what, even if you know about prior to that? I'd like to get your feel for what you think we've done right, what you think we've done wrong, what we could add. I mean, just kind of give me a feel for that, if you could.
I would say one of the first things that I think sets Carson City apart from the other cities, communities in Nevada, is the fact that you did consolidate in '69. I think that was a very smart decision, because by having a consolidated municipality, you brought a lot more resources to the city. I think it provided growth opportunities to the city that maybe other cities don't have, particularly capital cities in the rest of the country. I mean, I used to work in Harrisburg. Beautiful city, but because it didn't have any growth potential, because it was not consolidated with Dauphin County, there were lots of planning issues that became worse over the years. And I think that was very forward-thinking of the leaders back in '69 to consolidate the city with Ormsby County. I think it's very exciting what's happening now. I think for everybody, not just Carson City, but all of Northern Nevada, there's some great things happening. We know that housing is going to continue to be an issue in the community, and that's one thing that I have a lot of knowledge and experience in and very passionate about. Housing community development issues, dealing with homeless, dealing with the SROs on Carson Street, dealing with mental illness issues and what happens with crime and safety in the neighborhoods, dealing with the tension of neighborhoods versus new development, as we saw with the Vintage development. That will always be there, and that goes with the territory. So, but capital cities, I mean, again, I think it's hard to do wrong when you're in a capital city. You've got great heritage and history, and the term of placemaking. Well, you already have an established, beautiful historic capital here, and tremendous resources, no question.
And your take on downtown and those things?
I think what's really important now is to get more people living downtown and patronizing the stores, and there's still a lot of turnover in the commercial sector, and we see that going on with the Carson Mall. You obviously see some, the whole problem with northern Douglas County and everything that went on there, but the commercial sector and the entertainment sector, you need more people coming in, living downtown. So the more housing that can happen downtown, the better.
Do you think, and just my final one on this, and do you think that planning or zoning, planning decisions can affect that outcome that you just talked about, getting more people downtown?
Absolutely.
How?
Well, you look at what your master plan is saying, you look at where the zoning is. Are you getting enough density? Are there incentives there for the developers to bring in that housing, that mixed-use housing, or just straight multifamily housing that's needed in downtown? Are there opportunities for commercial properties now to turn over and become housing? That's one thing we're looking at, just as a segue, with the Douglas County Master Plan, and the fact that if you want to have multifamily development, you have to have a land use change to multifamily. What we're advocating for in the Master Plan update is to say, why not just allow multifamily rezoning in the commercial land use? Why create more barriers for developers to bring in that diverse housing stock that's needed, particularly in a place like Douglas County? So look at what the regulations are saying. look at if you're creating barriers to that kind of diverse housing stock, accessory dwelling units. I mean, there are things that can be done within your existing regulations that don't necessarily need subsidized housing. I mean, affordable housing does not have to be subsidized housing. It has to meet the people that are low income, that are working, that are government, teachers, public safety, whatever. So again, that's a perception problem that is always out there. But there are lots of things that can be done, Mayor.
Hi, Candace.
Good morning, good afternoon.
My first question is, what is your philosophy on special use permits, and do you think that it makes zoning irrelevant?
There are lots of, if you want to say, call it backdoor approaches sometimes, that sometimes are legitimate, sometimes are sort of a backdoor way to deal with an issue. The purpose of the special use permits should always be to say, this is a land use that may possibly work in a zoning district. It may not, it depends. Versus just saying, this is a land use that is allowed by right. There's no problems, there's no issues, there's no public hearings. It's handled, and you just get your building permit and you're good to go. The problem has been a lot of times that the land uses that are requiring special uses should not be required to have special uses, such as group homes, such as supportive housing, such as certain kinds of land developments that really should be handled administratively. And clearly the trend over the years has been to say, pull back on when those special use permits are required. Because if you need to meet community needs and housing community development needs, you should not be pulling those things into a special use permit process. It's a tricky balance, there's no question, but that certainly has been the trend, to say that if somebody wants to do a group home and is covered under fair housing, and Lee, I won't get started on this, but they should not be going through a public hearing process. Sure.
One other question, and that is, what is your opinion on growth management, and are you familiar with our current growth management
Yes,
policies?
I am. There are all kinds of ways of dealing with growth, and Carson and Douglas have both sort of focused on the number, and certainly your growth management ordinance came out of the fact that you really didn't have capacity because of the wastewater issues, and that's what really drove the creation of that. Douglas County was totally different. Douglas County was, we're just going to basically have a growth because we think this is the number, and 2%. The problem that I see, one of the problems, is that it does not dictate where growth is going. The growth management ordinances that we have in the books today are not dealing with the quality of the growth or where that growth is going. It's just a number. And I don't think that really gets you anywhere. And I don't think it's necessarily meaning anything. I mean, Douglas, they have to pay $361 to get an allocation. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do anything. So I think the growth management ordinance that we have today don't really make a difference per se. Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting comment. First, I would say that I think we as a group have discovered that the Planning Commission may have become the most critical advisory group that we have to this board in the last few years. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask this question to you to be fair to the other applicants, not because I really need to hear your answer. What is your experience in this field, and what are you bringing to the Planning Commission?
My experience is as a professional planner, who's a certified planner, who's been doing this work since '87. And it's very diverse. I've lived in lots of different places, so bring a lot of different perspectives to that work. Whether it's been, communities that are struggling like Harrisburg, or high growth communities. I worked in Clark County, Nevada, and Las Vegas from '92 to '98. So I have been around the planning profession, and I love the work. I think it's a tremendous profession and brings a lot.
Going back to your comment on growth management, I've been working with the city manager and with planning to work towards a long-range planning tool to match our carrying capacity for utilities or natural resources with current zoning and land use, so that it would give us a better idea when we get a request in front of us for an increase in density or for a maximum allowable density versus the mid-range or low end. How does all that work, and when should we be concerned moving forward on approving too many residential units or too much commercial development? Can you kind of give me your thoughts on that based on your previous comments on growth management?
Sorry. I think the greater concern is not, I'm not sure that the impacts are as severe when you're looking at areas that are already developed. The concern is when you're getting developments in the outer areas of the city, and serving those developments, and the impacts on roads that were never meant to be designed as arterials. I mean, the Carson City School District now, it's been okay for the last couple of years, but there's probably going to be some challenges coming through in the next 5 to 10 years. And what will that mean? I mean, I think in terms of more density in the developed areas of Carson City, yes, there's some older sewer lines and water lines in some of the older parts of the city. I used to live on South Nevada Street in the Esplanade development, and we've always had problems in some of these areas. So in terms of upgrading the infrastructure, yes. But in terms of the density itself, I don't know that is the biggest issue as much as handling these newer developments, such as the Schultz subdivision, newer Lumba Ranch, things like that are coming on board, and how to address that, and how to pay for the infrastructure that's needed for those developments.
And my final question is a question that I ask every applicant for the Planning Commission, and that is, how do you handle or deal with a situation where a builder or developer brings a project in front of the Planning Commission that meets our development standards, but there is a significant public outcry against the project? Do you follow the strict interpretation of the law, or are you influenced by the public outcry that may just be a NIMBY issue?
I think the job of the Planning Commission is obviously to listen and to do their homework and to read the staff reports, because the staff puts a lot of work into these staff reports to understand all the details and all the issues and do their homework, so that when the Planning Commission has their meetings, they're ready to understand the application, whatever is before them with the developer. And if the development is meeting the requirements of the code, then I don't know what the argument would be. You could have 300 people in the room that are opposing it, but if the developer is doing what is required, then there may be some issues that come up in the hearings, of course, that may need to be addressed down the road. There may be some opposition for something that is not currently addressed in the code that staff needs to deal with. Those things are perfectly legitimate, but in terms of right then, when the development project is before the Planning Commission, the role of the Planning Commission is not to bend to the wind. That is not the right approach, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, now that they're all asking multiple questions, it's like, uh-oh, let's see here. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Nope. I think I want to dive a little deeper into Brad's question. But this time, instead of what the audience is maybe testifying at the Planning Commission of their likes and dislikes about a program, what about if a developer comes in and represents a plan that you don't like, you, not the audience, and you don't think it's maybe compatible for the location, but it does technically meet the code? What would you do?
I mean, when you're looking at proposed developments, again, first you're going to read the staff report before you start coming to some thoughts or concerns about it. But if you're reading the report and you see you have some issues because of your background or your experience. Maybe you think that there's going to be school impacts that maybe haven't been addressed. I mean, certainly the Planning Commission should raise questions if they don't, if either they're getting citizens that are saying this isn't, we're not hearing that this is being addressed, then the Planning Commission can certainly, be there to raise those questions to the developer. But in terms of saying that the Planning Commissioner personally has as an issue with a development, I don't think that's really kosher.
So you're saying you could put aside your own feelings and do what the code or the requirement is?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then why don't you identify for me what you feel some of the key planning issues that will be facing Carson City in the next 5 years?
Again, housing. Where is housing going to go? What kind of housing? The downtown supporting the huge investments the city has made in downtown. Transportation, bringing back some of the streets now that 395 and Main Street and Spooner Junction is going to be there, and handling the impacts of, I mean, the good news is there'll be much less traffic on Fairview and South Carson, and what are the opportunities there? Obviously, Public Works, and it's going to be looking at the design of South Carson Street, and that's very exciting. So housing, transportation, having more diverse housing stock, dealing with the motels on Carson Street, how to handle that. I mentioned to Lee that in South Lake Tahoe, they've tried to deal with it because, again, a lot of the people who work there, they live in the motels. So the motels become your de facto SROs. And so what South Lake Tahoe tried to do is basically say, okay, we're going to recognize that people are using motels for permanent long-term housing. But if the motels want to operate and provide that SRO housing, then they need to be up to code. And we'll give them, I don't know if it was a year, 6 months, I can't remember. But it was recognizing the fact that people are living in the motels. There is no housing available for people who need to live near South Lake Tahoe or in South Lake Tahoe. And of course, you have the state line casinos in Douglas County, but that's another issue. So it's recognizing what's happening and then saying how do we adjust, how do we revise or upgrade the codes to deal with these issues that we know are going to go on today. And then if the motels are not going to upgrade and provide that proper housing, whether it's SRO or you redevelop the motel and have larger units, then they should not be allowed to continue to operate that housing.
One more question. Do you feel you have any conflicts of interest that would arise if you served on the Planning Commission?
No. I am a part-time consultant for Wells Barnett Associates, which is up at State Line. And then I established my own consulting firm here in Carson City in 2013. And the only contract that I have now is with the town of Gardnerville for the Eagle Gas Station redevelopment project.
Okay, thank you.
So Candace, this is not my official question. When were you in Harrisburg?
I was there 2 times. First time was, let's see, 90, was it 90? This is bad. I think it was 98 to 2000. And then I came back, I went back to Harrisburg to become Planning Bureau Director from 2008 to 2010.
Interesting. The reason I ask is that I was the UPI Bureau Manager in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania from 1972 to 1974. And your comment regarding the wisdom of the earlier people in these chairs and over at that building who made this into a consolidated community is accurate. I used to live in Mechanicsburg, and we both know there's a reason for that. Although I'm glad I got out before the problems with the nuclear plant. My question, of course, got taken because we're now doing multiple questions. So I will ask it, and then I will riff off of it. Growth management ordinance here calls for growth cap of 3%. This is the original question, forget it, because I was going to ask you if it was too high, too low, or about right. You've already said number doesn't mean a thing. So and you've also told us that it's more important where you put things. How do you go about influencing the community and your colleagues on the Planning Commission regarding where things should go? That's one of the toughest things, is to, I think, to build a coalition for whatever you think should be done.
I'll just relate, because we're working on this right now. We're involved in the update of the Douglas County Master Plan. And one of the issues is in Douglas County, and I frankly don't remember if you have this in Carson City, but in Douglas County, we have urban service areas that are meant to say that all the suburban development, the big subdivisions should be happening within those urban service areas. Urban service areas around the towns, around Minden, Genoa, actually Gardnerville, Indian Hills GID, and obviously Gardnerville Ranchos, which is really the biggest community in Douglas County. So the struggle is to say, if those urban service areas are meant to mean anything, then there should not be any growth happening outside those urban service areas. That those ag areas, the rural areas, and the people, are very protective of the rural areas. They don't want to see suburban development coming into those areas. But it means holding the line and saying that those urban service areas have to mean something. It's not just a line on the map. And so, again, I don't remember hearing that Carson City had anything like that. I mean, to say that, where is development supposed to happen or not to happen? And obviously the tension is buying up the open space with Juan Guzman as your former open space manager, and all the success in trying to preserve that open space, and saying where are the best locations for new growth to happen. So it's always the conflict there.
And the coalition building part?
Well, the coalition building part, I think you have to say, what is working and what is not working. Are there things that need to be changed in the development code? Are there things in the master plan that need to be changed to make it work better? I mean, it's looking at all the tools you've got and saying, is it working?
Excellent segue to my second question, which I didn't have to, although the master plan has been touched on. But Carson City hasn't fully updated its master plan since 2006, and obviously the work was done in 4 and 5, which means it's over a decade. Should we be doing that, given the fact that it costs $250,000 to $500,000 to do an updated master plan? Is it overdue, or can we go along for another 3 to 5 years or longer without doing it?
Well, I'll just tell you that we're updating the Douglas County Master Plan, nowhere near that kind of a figure. And I think there are people out there in Northern Nevada who could do a new master plan for the city. My philosophy is that really and truly, I think after 20 years is maximum, but I think maybe to start gearing up to look at doing a new master plan for the city. I know it's hard because it will obviously cost money, and it's a lot, and there are lots of new ways of doing these master plans in terms of the technology and the citizen output. But it's an exciting opportunity. The concern always, though, is that you put so much effort into doing these new master plans, and the problem is that the monitoring and the actions that come out of these new master plans tend to fall by the wayside, and that, frankly, is the most important part. And we as planners contribute to that problem. Believe me, I know it. But that's the point, is not to just do it so it's a big show and tell. The point is to have some really good actions coming out of those master plans.
Anything you want to add, Candace?
I think it's an exciting time to be on the Planning Commission, and I think the school board sort of helped me to become acclimated to the process, procedures, and again, I take it very seriously in terms of serving on citizen boards, and I would appreciate the opportunity.
And speaking to the school board, you were on it for a year. Did you fill an unexpired term?
I did.
Okay, all right.
I did.
And didn't want to run for election then?
Well, I didn't want to run for election and then for any reason feel that I was going to leave the community. I felt that was not appropriate. So I pulled back. And I know District 6 has had a lot of turnover in terms of school board candidates, unfortunately. But I hope there's more stability on that seat now.
That brings to mind an obvious question, which is, are you thinking of leaving?
No, not at all. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, board? Candace, thank you for applying, and got an impressive resume. You're welcome to sit and listen to see how we do on the rest. Okay, thank you. Hi, Zach.
Good afternoon.
How you doing this afternoon?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good. Sorry to keep you waiting out there.
No problem.
Kind of, each of us got, I don't think you've been through this process before, have you? Kind of all get a chance to, we all get a chance to ask you questions. And we're not, sometimes we limit ourselves to couple questions, but you can expect probably more this time if there is. So, the first question I have for you just to start off and get you warmed up here is, one, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we got your application and why you want to be on the Planning Commission. And then I'd like you to think about an answer to what are the good things and bad things you think of Carson City's done in its planning, and say in the last 10 years or so, or 5, whatever, okay? You start off. I'll give you the question again, but start, kind of tell us who you are and why you want to do it and what your background is and why you think you're capable of doing it. So, go.
Okay, my name is Zachary Nevada Hofling. Born and raised here in Carson City. I saw the opportunity to volunteer. That was my driving force behind all of it. I had the time, and I wanted to do something for my city. As I said, I was born and raised here, never lived anywhere else. Grew up here, went to school here, got all of my education here. And it's just, I felt it was time for me to start volunteering.
Very good. I think I know your parents, I think. I do. Okay. The question I have to you that I want to ask you is, what do you think the city's done right or wrong in terms of planning decisions over the last, you can call it 5 years or 10 years. You've been here all your life, so, feel free to go back as far as you want, but I'd like to know in the last 10 years at least, what, good things or bad things? Or what we should have done differently?
I think I see a lot of the change in direction the city's going, and it's very positive. All the events, the downtown project is beautiful. It's not perfect, but it's beautiful. Everyone seems to love it. I don't know that I've seen anything wrong. I see a lot of things I might not agree with, but I think that's it's like a healthy competition. You're not going to agree with everything, but just because you don't know everything about it either, there's usually a reason behind it. So.
Okay. Let's start down here. Anybody want to go next? John, you want to go next this time?
Sure. I'll ask a very good question. You have a growth management ordinance in the city? I'm sorry. I thought I had. I probably put this on top of it. We have a growth management ordinance in the city that calls for a growth cap of 3%. Is that too much, too little, about right? And adding on to that a little bit more, where should growth go in your mind in the city?
Having lived here, I've seen this city grow immensely. I often wonder where you're going to go next, because it seems a lot of times that we're running out of room. A cap, I'm sure, is there for a reason. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I know all about that, because I don't. I think it could be a good thing. You don't want to overgrow and and not have the resources. I've seen a lot of housing that seems to be a problem, people finding places to live. So I can understand why many would be opposed to that, because people need housing and need places to go. But as a volunteer and learning the process, I'm sure I'd have a better answer for that.
Thank you. We haven't reached that cap lately because, of course, we went through a recession. Carson City hasn't done a full master plan review. We've updated it annually, but we haven't done a full master plan review in more than a decade. Do you think was one that's needed anytime soon, or can we wait, given the idea that it'll cost some money to do?
I think a master plan is something that should be revisited on occasions. How often, I do not know, but it is definitely something that needs to be addressed every certain amount, so often, in a certain amount of time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for applying. We really appreciate it. If a developer comes in and represents a plan that you don't like or you don't think is compatible to the location, but it technically meets all of our codes, what would you do?
I would give that same person as the opportunity as any other to plead their case and prove to me why. If it meets all the codes and everything's the way it should be, just because I don't like it, doesn't mean everyone else is going to feel the same way I am. It's just going to be, show me what I'm missing.
Why don't you tell me what you think some key planning issues will be facing Carson City in the next 5 to 10 years?
I still think housing is going to be a big issue. Where to put all the people that keep coming, because this is a great city.
Okay. And do you feel you would have any conflicts of interest if you were to receive the appointment to the Planning Commission?
Absolutely not.
Zach, I have a similar question to Lori's first question, which is, we have a developer or builder that brings a project in front of the Planning Commission, and it meets all of our development standards, but the room is packed with 200 members of the public that oppose the project. How do you handle that? What's your decision?
I've been a state employee for 15 years, in 2 weeks, 15 years. I started my service with the Legislative Council Bureau, so I saw a lot of testimony, a lot of hearings on situations such as this. Not everyone's going to agree, but everyone needs to be heard. It may not happen as quickly as most like, but that's valuable data that needs to be taken into consideration.
So I think we as a group up here have come to the conclusion over the last couple of years that the Planning Commission is the most critical advisory group that we depend on. So what is your experience in the planning or development or building fields, and what does that experience bring to the Planning Commission that is going to help us?
I don't have any experience in that field. I saw an opportunity to give my service to my city, and that was why I took it. I did not do this because I felt I had the experience. I saw an opportunity to volunteer, and that was why I did it. I'm going to learn everything I can, take everything I can from the position if offered, and I'm going to do the best I can for the city. Yeah.
Hi, Zach.
Hi.
Couple of questions. First of all, what does the concept quality of growth mean to you, and should it be considered in approving or disapproving a project?
Quality of growth to me would be what's being built, where it's being built, how it's being built, and how it's best fitting the needs of the city and the citizens around it. Can you repeat the second part of the question?
And should it be considered when you're approving or disapproving a project?
Absolutely, it should be considered.
Okay.
You need to make sure and take care of the city and its citizens, yeah.
My second question for you is, what is your philosophy on special use permits, and do you think they make zoning irrelevant?
From what I know of special use permits, it's, a lot of people see it as maybe a hassle, but, paperwork, but it's put in place for a reason. You know, if it wasn't there, people would do whatever they wanted. We got to have a check and a balance. It's necessary. Sure.
Okay. Hey, Zach, you want to add anything?
I don't.
And we applaud you for, seeing an opportunity and applying. There's no particular qualifications. We're a citizen-run government, all our boards are citizen-run, so don't let that, that is what it is. I have one last question, and that is, do you think that planning or zoning can or should be used to direct the type of population or the age group of a population you want in the community?
No, I don't. I think everyone should be, not zoned. I think it's, everyone should have the same opportunities.
All right. Okay. You're welcome to sit around, and we got one more applicant. We'll see where it goes.
All
That's
right.
the hard part.
All right.
But again, on behalf of all of us up here, I want to thank you for applying, and it's good to have a person who's born and raised here come in and say they want to help their community, so.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Okay.
very much
You
for
bet.
seeing me.
Tell your boss hi for me. I hired her. She'll know who I am. Don't look at, he works for Venus. She moved from Vegas.
Hello, Robert. Is it Robert or Bob?
Doesn't matter.
That's me too, doesn't matter. But,
Last name is Ash, so don't call me Jack.
okay. That's a good way to start.
Good.
Okay. Okay, Jack.
I knew you'd say that.
I don't think you've been through these processes before, have you?
No, I have not.
Yeah, but we each get a chance to ask questions of you, and then we, maybe get a second round of questions. We want to find out, kind of why you want to do this, and kind of what your thoughts are on development and things of that nature. So, and I'll start off by just asking, a general question is, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we've got your application, why you want to do it, and what skills you bring, and we'll be asking a little bit more about that too. But
Did you guys get a copy of my resume?
we did.
You did, okay.
We have it. And I know, just, we got the resume, we read it, and just talk to us a little bit about, just to get you started on what.
Okay, my name is Bob Ash. I'm a retired college professor from Orange County, California. Taught business, finance, management. Did a lot of consulting with public entities, to include teaching the planning process or sharing that kind of information. Retired in 2006. My wife and I moved to Dayton, Nevada. We're there about 18 months. During that time, I taught some classes for Western Nevada College in business and finance, and I taught at the old men's prison and the women's prison. I think that's Silver Springs or Silver City, no, not Silver City, Silver Springs, I think. And then my wife and I decided to move back to Southern California. We sold our home in Dayton, moved back there, and we were there in Southern California about 6 years, and started doing an extensive research on where we wanted to really retire. and we knew we wanted to get out of Southern California because of the 91 freeway and the traffic and the mess. And so we looked at Arizona and Idaho and Northern California and Nevada and visited here twice and absolutely fell in love with this city. We moved here 18 months ago, and we feel like we have died and gone to heaven. Based on my educational experience and my consulting experience, especially with public entities like cities and counties, I would like to, since I am now retired, give back to the city and help ensure that this city is as successful as it is now. And that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Bob. And I think, Ed, I don't know if it's on your resume or not, but you also helped the chamber leadership class, right?
Yes. When I moved here, I went in to see Ronnie Hanneman, and I told her I did a lot of the leadership programs for the chambers in Southern California, actually about 6 different cities and the county of Orange, and that if she had an opening, I'd like to be a presenter for leadership Carson City. And she did some investigating, and they said, you're crazy if you don't have him come present. So I did this first, the current leadership, and it was a lot of fun. Graduation's coming up next week, I think.
Sure is.
Or a couple weeks.
I think you and I met at that class.
Pardon?
I think you and I met at that class.
Yes, we met there and at Adams Hub.
That's right.
Yeah.
Bob, speaking, about, you've been here 18 months, you kind of came, give me a picture of what you think we've done right or wrong in terms of the development in this community. And, you can limit it to when the time you were here or what you've heard anecdotally or whatever. And I'd also like to know if you've had a chance to spin through the zoning codes, the municipal codes on zoning. So
I did not. I have not had a chance to do that through the zoning codes. I did in Southern California and assisted a couple of cities with that. But what are you doing right and wrong here? I can't think of anything wrong. Because I'm new, some people would probably say, he's too new. Let him get his feet wet and get established a little bit. On the other hand, there's an advantage to me being on the commission, and that would be that I'm bringing new eyes and fresh eyes to look at development in Carson City. I think what you're doing right here, and one of the reasons we chose Carson City to live, you have 4 things going for you, in my opinion. Number 1, you have a remarkable history. Number 2, you have extraordinary beauty. Just the cloud formations here are just stunning to me. Number 3 is the friendliness of the people, no matter where we go, including the DMV, because we were just there. I had a long talk with this gentleman, the previous applicant. You have, and I think the reason that the people here are so friendly in Carson City is because they don't have the stress and tension of driving the freeways. That's not here. My neighbors say, oh, that traffic on the 580 into Reno is terrible. And I go, yeah, try the 91 or the 15 or the 5.
Could you repeat that to the whole city about 1,000 times?
I'm a big cheerleader now, believe me, I am. I guess it's perspective. So those are my comments. I have not had a chance to look at the zoning. Somehow, some way, I'm going to get on one of your committees or commissions and get active.
Well, thanks, Bob, and on behalf of all of us, thanks for applying, and thanks for the kind words about our community, which is your community as well. So, who wants to go next?
Me?
Lori, go.
Thank you so much for applying. We really appreciate it. So if a developer comes in and presents a plan that you don't like, or you don't believe is compatible to the location, but it technically meets our codes, what would you do?
Well, I assume that I would work with the other commissioners. And I'm a big believer in doing homework. I would pledge, whether I'm on the Planning Commission or another committee or another commission, that because I'm retired, I am going to give 110%. I did apply for the opening on the school board and turned in my application and everything because there was a resignation. And unfortunately, the secretary called me and said, the center of your street, Elm Street, is the dividing line between one district and another. And I go, oh, shoot. That would have been a lot of fun, too, being on the school board. But I believe in doing my homework. I would spend a lot of time looking at the developer's plans, listening to and getting input from the other commissioners. And if I didn't like the location personally, I would so state that. I'm not afraid to say no. I was reading in the Nevada Appeal this morning about the Planning Commission. Planning takes up limiting growth based on their last meeting. And one of the things that caught my eye, and I did some research on it, is they agreed with one of the developer that they would, I think the developer wanted 1.2 parking spaces per unit. And the commission and I believe the board also agreed to 1.7. So then I did a Google search on that to see how many cars are, in fact, at each household in the United States, and it's 2.09. So I think I would have been against the 1.7 because I was also on the board of an HOA, and parking's critical. So if location is a problem for that developer and or there's not enough land for parking, I think I would so state that.
And then why don't you tell me anything that you feel will be some key issues facing our Planning Commission in the next 5 years?
I think your growth.
Okay.
My opinion is you're going to, from what I have read and done research on, you're going to witness some tremendous growth in Northern Nevada. You have people like me that are tired of California in many different ways. And I think a lot of people are going to be looking at, especially retirees, moving into this area. I don't know how much open development land you have. I saw that there is some restrictions on how many units and how many permits can be given out, and that was in today's Nevada Appeal. But I think your growth is going to be a biggie, and I think to me, I think the term Planning Commission, I don't think, in my opinion, the commission doesn't really plan. You've done that. You have a mission statement. You have your department goals. I have taught for years there's 3 steps in the planning process. The first step is A. You say, where are we right now today? Second step is, this is our goal. Here's where we want to be. Here's A, here's B. The third step in planning is to develop the plan, the route to go from A to B. I think the Planning Commission is in that third step, meaning you have set the goals and the mission statement, and the Planning Commissions and all the commissions are to advise you on what's the best arrow to go from A to B. I think that would be my job as a commissioner.
Okay, and then my last question for you is, do you feel you would have any conflicts of interest if we were to give you the appointment to the Planning Commission?
Any conflicts of interest? No, just the opposite. I'm raring and ready to go.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Good afternoon.
My first question is similar to Lori's first question. A developer or builder brings a project in front of the Planning Commission. It meets our development standards, but the room is filled with 200 members of the public that oppose the project. What do you do in that situation, and what is your decision on the project?
I saw that and read about that with the development called Vantage or Vintage. And I guess the point that I had on that is all of those people that lived around that development were against it, but on the other hand, their homes were just like that years ago. So what is to prevent a developer from developing that land and bringing some, I think it's an over 55 development, age 55. I would listen. I'm a good listener, but I am for growth, planned growth, and I would so state that. I'm not afraid to express my opinions.
My next question is, I think we've come to the conclusion that the Planning Commission is probably the most critical advisory group that we have, that we depend on to do some of our homework for us. So what is your experience in the planning or building or development industry, and what does that bring to the Planning Commission that helps us do our job?
Good question, and I have very limited experience in development and building. That's the best that I can say. I have limited experience, but as I said, I'm a quick learner, and I think I could offer quite a bit. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for applying.
Thank you.
My first question is, what is your concept of, your thought process of quality of growth? And do you think it should be considered in approving or disapproving a project?
Well, I'm not sure what quality of growth means. My opinion on quality of growth would be that it's a controlled and organized growth pattern based on, again, the mission statement of the city and where the board wants to take the city and where the residents also want to take the city. Parking spaces is a good example of that. I personally don't agree with 1.2 parking spaces per unit, not when the average home has 2.09. We ran into that problem in I was on the board of a Del Webb community in Southern California and on the planning committee and the finance committee. And that was a biggie. What is quality of growth, and what does that mean? Most people have a different definition of that. My job, I think, as a commissioner would be to advise and give our opinion to you folks. You're the decision makers. So quality of growth to me is making sure that people are happy and content. And you can't make everybody happy. I was a negotiator for faculty for 10 years, and that was the unbelievable job. because I couldn't, it's difficult to make everybody happy. But you have to do your job.
Thank you. And my second question is, what is your philosophy on special use permits, and do you think they make zoning irrelevant?
No, I don't think they make zoning irrelevant because there's always going to be a need to tweak or change the ordinance, and that's where special use permits come in. And again, our job would be to look at it, to weigh it, and to give you folks some advice on it. You're the final decision makers.
Let me follow up on a question about.
Oh, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, you're
I don't
next.
think I had any questions, but go
Hey,
ahead.
you know what? The First Amendment got me again, man. All right, go for it. Sorry.
Well, the First Amendment is probably about to go out of the border lines here, because I'm going to ask this man a question based on his, Bob, on your background as a finance man. It hasn't got anything to do with this, and so it's not an official question, but where are interest rates going in the next 5 years? Yeah, never mind. You don't have to answer that one. We have a growth management ordinance here, which says 3%. We haven't reached that because we went through a recession, and that's actually would bulge us fairly quickly. And it's tied to amount of resources we have, et cetera. Is that too large, too small, or about right, do you think?
My opinion, just right.
Just right,
Yeah,
okay.
that's my opinion.
Thank you. My second question is that Carson City hasn't done a full management plan, a master plan, I mean, review in more than 10 years. We review it each year, but just, for what you call tweaks. And it's actually been more than 10 years. If you figure it's 2017, it went in 2006, and it was done in actually 4 and 5, really. Do we need to do one, given that it's going to cost some money if we do another one now or soon, or can it wait?
Sooner than later, my opinion.
Thank you.
What I would recommend also is that you get folks from the community and have a special use commission that could do some brainstorming and bring in some creativity on planning. So you haven't done any master planning for 11 years. My opinion, it's...
I wouldn't say we haven't done any, but it's been...
Well, but the big plan...
Annual updates, yeah, the whole plan, right.
Yeah. No, I think it's long overdue, to be honest with you. And that's something that I would love to get involved with.
So I apologize to you, John. One of the reasons why the master plan hasn't been reviewed or hasn't been gone through again in a formal setting was because when the recession hit, we had no growth, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our building department was empty. There was nothing coming before the planning commission. So, we had a space of about 5 or 6 years there where, we had a master plan that was done in 2006, but there was nothing changed in this community. Absolutely nothing changed. And there was nothing because the economy had gone in the tank. But that's, that's not a, that's not the be-all and end-all, but that's one of the reasons why the master plan hasn't been reviewed, because there was just no grounds or reason for that yet. But the question I have to you, Bob, and you can answer, you can talk to me about that if you'd like, but it has to do with property rights. And sometimes it seems to me that property rights, in my view anyway, are guaranteed. They're a constitutional right that we have in this country to own property. Overlaid that, when you come to a community, are zoning, master plan and zoning issues that kind of erode, or not erode, but they put restrictions on what you can or can't do with that piece of property. And those are legal things to do. But in the middle of all that, between absolute property right, do whatever you want to do, and zoning, there are some areas or gray areas. And one of those areas that I'd like your opinion on is, if you had 10 acres of property and a developer came to you and he said, I want to put 10 townhomes on this, but your neighbor said, I want to put 5 single-family units on there, both authorized by your zoning code, what would you do? Would you tell a developer, you're not going to put townhomes on there? You're going to, because you can do 5 townhomes, you can do five single-family homes too. That's under your zoning code, so you go do that. We don't want to see the townhomes. What do you do about that when a developer or an owner, take developer out, when an owner says, this is what I want to do with my property?
I think that goes back to your question on quality growth and what that means, and how the city defines that. What would I do? I don't know. There's so many variables I'd have to look at and study before I could make it.
The question is, what weight do you give a landowner's right or landowner's ability to manage and invest and develop their own piece of property?
I give a lot of weight to that, a tremendous amount of weight. However, that's your job. Your jobs, again, the commissions and the committees give you advice based on their opinions. But your job is to look at that quality growth and to make a decision for that developer as to the impact on the schools, as to the impact on the neighborhood, as to the impact that, I mean, there's a lot of variables that would come into play on that. How many acres per unit or per home? Based on what you said, it would be 2 acre lots if it's 10 homes.
Yeah, I'm just giving that as an
Yeah,
you know.
okay, so, but that's a variable that you'd have to look at, I think, and I'm sure that the Planning Commission would look at that and, again, offer their opinions. I have opinions. I think property rights are, I'm a big believer in them, because I'm a big believer in the United States Constitution. When you buy property, my wife is part Indian, so she says you never own property. You just are the caretaker of it for a while.
There's something to that.
Yeah, and there is something to that, too. But what about the future of that property? 5 residents versus 10 townhomes. And what would be the impact of either of those, A or B, as far as the variables that affect the city and the quality growth?
Do you think the city should shut off growth, period?
Shut off what?
Do you think the city should close the gates now and shut off growth?
Shut off growth?
Yeah, just close the gates right now.
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Should a family shut off growth of its resources and its finances and its goals? Should the state of Nevada shut off growth? Should the United States shut off growth? That's a big debate going on in Washington right now between the different factions. No, I don't. I do believe in growth, quality growth, as long as it's controlled. And that it's organized. No, I don't think we should shut off growth in Carson City. I think you have a lot, as I said, you have a lot to share here. And I think you better sit down, buckle up, hold on, because the word's out, especially people like me. And I've heard some people say, but we don't want those Californians coming in. Well, people are a little bit shocked when they realize that I am not a flaming liberal because of what I taught in college. I'm more of a fiscal conservative, but I do believe in growth.
In a sense, it gets down to sustainability of a community. If you don't have growth, you're really going stagnant in a sense.
Yeah, you become stagnant. That's true. Growth is good as long as it's controlled, because it brings new stuff in.
One last question to you, and I appreciate entertaining a dialogue with me here. Do you think that the planning laws or planning codes should be used to one, control the type of growth that you get in terms of demographics, age demographics?
No, I do not believe in that.
Okay,
No.
all right. Thank you very much, Bob, for
Okay.
bearing with me here a little bit. Okay, all right. Do you want to add anything that we raised up here?
No, you did a good job.
I don't know about that, but,
I think so.
all right, Bob, thanks. You're welcome to sit. Now we got to have the hard job of making-
Afterwards, Bob, would you tell me where interest rates are going?
Which interest rate? Investing or borrowing?
All right. Board, we got two positions. As usual, these are the tough positions, tough decisions to come down. So anybody want to start? Nobody?
I will.
All right.
I'm going to be the bad cop. As I mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission, I think we've seen over the last few years, and we can anticipate this continuing over the next several years, it's critical that we have people that are experienced in the field on that particular commission, even though it's not a requirement of the position. I think that we've had some growth, to use a pun, we've had some growth issues on the Planning Commission with some of the members not having experience. So I admire and I respect Zach and Bob applying for this. I'm hesitant to put people who don't have experience in this position. I want to put you guys on a committee. I admire you for wanting to volunteer. I just don't know that this is the committee to put you on, because it can have very critical impacts for us up here. So I just want the rest of the board members to consider that when we make a decision here today.
May I go next? Sure. I think I'm on the same page as Brad. We've had great presentations from all of you, but I think my former colleague from Harrisburg is going to get my vote. Good presentations all, and I agree with Brad. I want both of the gentlemen to apply for other committees, because you both show a lot that would be of great aid to this community, but I'm going to go with Candace.
Well, I'm in agreement with that thought process, and I appreciate everyone applying, but Candace clearly brings the experience and the expertise to that commission that is critical, and we've been needing for quite some time, and growth is coming here. And it's essential that we move forward in a logical fashion, in a thoughtful fashion, so that we grow to the quality that this community has come to enjoy. So my vote is for Candace, and I thank the other two gentlemen who have applied.
Well, okay. So I think I certainly can agree with Candace, but before I knock out potentially Robert from getting one of the appointments, I'd feel more comfortable. What is it that we think in his skill set that was lacking? Because I look at the Planning Commission as having critical thinkers, people that can apply the codes that are out there, and I think he showed something a little bit remarkable today to say, you know, I looked up what the Planning Commission did last night on the parking, and I Googled out what's the reality and what are people really having in cars. And so are we looking for people, especially in special use permits, because that is your critical thinking. So it's allowable, but it's always with conditions. And so what is it that you're looking for in a particular expertise? I don't think they all have to be builders or developers. I don't know that that's everyone that should be on, or prior planners. I'm looking for critical thinkers that can marry up both quality that we need, code, and reasonableness as to where we're going. So I thought that Robert displayed that. So I'm not opposed to putting Robert on, because I think he'll bring a critical thinking process to that board. So just a thought.
So to respond to that, I agree with your comments that we're looking for critical thinkers, but at the same time, if I was applying for this position, I would have looked through the municipal code, I would have looked through the development standards, I would have met with the department heads of planning and building, possibly the city manager. And most importantly, the reason I think that experience is necessary is going back to your example of the parking issue. There are specific parking studies for urban or rural or high-density urban, and they have different requirements. So you can't just say that you can go look at the national average, which is 2.2 or 2.02, and say that that fits every situation. And somebody with experience would know that, and I just don't know that I want people learning on the job in this committee. I have no objections to putting, I appreciate you guys applying, and we want people like you. We really want people like you. But this particular committee has been an issue for us over the last couple of years, and I don't want to repeat the same mistakes.
May I also jump in here? I'm agreement with you, Lori. Critical thinking was displayed by all three in actuality, and I appreciated Bob's presentation. I don't think that Candace's presentation showed a lack of critical thinking. I think she's quite capable of doing that too, and I thought it was quite organized, and of course, as Brad says, also has the background. So that, I don't think you're wrong. I just think we've discerned critical thinking in both of them.
Okay, we'll entertain a motion to appoint Candace Stoll to the Planning Commission.
I move to appoint Candace Stoll to the Carson City Planning Commission for a term that expires 2021, and recommend that we open the application process back up to fill the vacant position, remaining vacant position.
There's a motion and a second, and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Go.
So just as a question on opening it up, so how many times are we gonna, so here would be my question. Are you recommending that we change the Planning Commission to have requirements for service? Then I might actually agree with what you guys are, should before we open it back up, what I don't want to do is set up more people to come to the table to say they're going to serve, and we just throw them out and say you're not good enough. So if we want to reopen it, can we put on some conditions of what we're looking for? Like you have to have, I don't know, 4 years experience in one of the 5 areas. I'm okay with where you want to go if we do something like that.
What I hear is not changing the rules on that, but asking those who apply to, at least what I hear from the board here, I mean, and is that have a little more in-depth understanding of the role of the commission they're applying for, and talking to the relevant players when they come here to get here, because I tend to agree with you, Lori, that at the end of the day you want critical thinkers, and that's a criteria. So, but that's how I read this. So.
I don't think anybody's trying to stop anybody from being on the board. I think it's just the candidate that we decided that we thought would be best. I, unlike Brad, didn't cite experience. So it's obviously the candidate we're choosing has a wealth of experience, but I thought she gave a great presentation, and it helped that she had the experience. But I'm not saying the next person might not have absolutely no experience at all. It would just depend.
All right. Further discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Got the count?
It wasn't a no against Candace.
These are hard decisions, and I think that Robert and Zach know what we're going through here, and Candace knows what we're going through. And like I say, we'll find some place to go so that you can volunteer to help your community, and both very well-spoken individuals. So, you know, these are hard decisions for us. Just keep at us, okay? All right, thanks, folks. We'll be in recess, and then we'll take up, let's see, do we have to do that now? Want to take a break for 10 minutes? We'll be in recess for 5 to 10 minutes here. Bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're on item 28, Bravo. This is an update on the city's geographic information system, GIS. We have Stephanie and Matthew here to lead us through this. So give us the 30,000-foot level, then dip down if you need to.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. My name is Stephanie Hicks, and Matt Loughton is also with me. He is our asset manager, and I think I've said before in our asset management presentation how fortunate the city really is to have Matt as our asset manager and overseeing our GIS department. He brings a lot of experience and expertise with him, and what we want to provide to you is just a high-level overview today of some of the highlights of where we've been in the last year, and then also discuss some of what we see coming forward in the future. And with Dan Stuckey, our new city engineer, also coming online, he has a background in GIS as well, so we're really excited to see where this will go in the future. And with that, I will let Matt lead you through the presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Supervisors. It's a pleasure for me to give a progress report to you on our geographic information system for the city. And I know it's a long day and it's only getting longer, so I'm going to try and go through this very quickly. I've assembled a timeline of GIS accomplishments that we've gone through for the last year since July 1st, 2016. This is not a comprehensive list, but as you can see, GIS has been pretty busy since the transition from Douglas County. I'm going to highlight a few of these accomplishments and also share with you some of the goals that we have for the upcoming fiscal year. So this graphic here, I think, is important to view because we have our allocation of support hours for GIS. These are contracted hours as well as my hours as the asset manager. The chart shows GIS support hours since July 1st, and it includes both our hours. It's a significant percentage of the time is spent on GIS enterprise support. GIS enterprise support. What that means is basically keeping our geo database up and running, system administration, scripting, desktop support, support for our online applications, basically giving users access to our GIS and making sure they have access to our GIS data. Next is asset management. I know that many of you are very in tune with asset management and what we're doing with the city, but specifically, we've been supporting asset inventory for our utilities, integration with the work order management system, GIS support for our sanitary sewer master plan, condition assessment for city facilities, and then the remainder of those of the graph there shows the support hours for specific departments that we have spent for the year. I think it's important to note that we've spent a lot of time for the GIS enterprise support, mostly due to the transition of services on July 1st. I don't think we've had a typical support year, so I think we'll have a much clearer picture through the next fiscal year of where we really allocate our GIS support time for both our contracted work and for my time as well. One of the big projects that we've been working on is the parcel fabric. This is something that the city has been working toward for several years. We're very close to finalizing it. What is the parcel fabric? Well, as the slide says, it's a continuous surface of connected parcel polygons defined by coordinate geometry. The city's actually had a GIS parcel layer for a couple of decades now, but it's suffered from some accuracy issues. Also, within recent years, there's been an industry-adopted methodology for maintaining parcel data in GIS, and so this project is moving us toward correcting those accuracy issues and also moving on to that industry-adopted methodology for maintaining our parcel data. And the next slide here shows us some visual examples of the issues that we run into. The red lines are our current parcel data. The green line is a sample area that we were provided from our contractor, Michael Baker International, of adjusted parcels in the parcel fabric. So you can see the level of improvement for this particular area. So we expect to have delivery of the data on June 15th, and we should have this finalized by the end of June.
I didn't understand what that graph is showing there. Could you?
Sure. So the red lines, that's our current parcel data. So if you go onto our GIS applications, that's what you see. The green lines have been drawn in from recorded documents. So what's happened is that over the years, our GIS parcel data has been adjusted and moved around. Some of it has been adjusted to aerial photography, when really we want to have the true alignment of the parcels to the recorded map, recorded documentation. And so that's what this project is really doing, is going back and adjusting our parcels so that they're an accurate depiction of the legal description of the property. So something that's really important to me and that I spent a lot of time on over the last 11 months is GIS process improvement. This is kind of the behind the scenes stuff, but it's really necessary to keep our GIS functional and up to date. One of the biggest complaints I received when I arrived was that our GIS utility data was not accurate nor updated. And so updates, I was told that updates would get submitted, they would never get put into the GIS database. So it was really important to me to fix that broken process. So through research and discussing with stakeholders, I was able to develop a workflow for receiving, processing, and publishing our utility data updates in GIS. By the end of October, we had gone through the backlog of utility edits that we had and incorporated them into our GIS database. And we now have the ability to quickly log utility updates, edit them in GIS, and get them published to our users in a very short period of time. Similar to the utility updates, our GIS parcel edits had a backlog of a few months when I arrived. So within about a week, I was able to get our contractor, Applied Geographics, to update the parcel data. By September, we had repaired all of the automated processes and synchronization so that we could have it out on our online GIS applications, and the parcel edits were current as of then. The assessor's office now sends a monthly parcel edit report with supporting documentation, and those edits are typically published to our GIS database within about 5 business days. So once we get the data from the assessor's office, we get it into GIS very quickly.
Matt, if I could jump in there real quick. So you're going through the process of correcting the GIS parcel boundaries to actual legal descriptions. How do you handle boundary line adjustments, records of survey, new parcel maps? Do you wait until those are recorded and then you pick them up through the recorder's office, or what's the process?
Yeah, so we have to wait till they're recorded because they're not legal until they are recorded. The first step is they actually go to the assessor's office. So they draw up the changes to the parcel maps, the assessor parcel maps, and then they provide us a monthly report of all the changes that were made. And then we go from there with the supporting documentation, if they have CAD files, whatever other documentation required. And then we log those, pass them over to the contractor. They do the editing, and the turnaround's very quick once we get those reports. So one of the ways that our users access our GIS data is through published runbooks. This is kind of the old way of accessing data, map atlases. I've identified 8 runbooks that we publish or have published over the years that are still used by staff on a regular basis. 6 of these are in support of public works and utilities, while 2 of them are more public safety focused. Initially, these were printed, but we've moved forward now, and they're available as PDF maps, and they're updated from our GIS data. Some of them had not been updated in a number of years, so that was a priority for me, was to task our contractor, Michael Baker, to go in and update these run books. So we've updated 7 out of the 8. The one that's remaining is the Sheriff's Office run book. It was last updated 15 years ago. So it's rather out of date with the growth that's gone on in the city. So we have a task for AppGeo to go in and recreate that run book, and they're doing that as we speak. So more importantly is getting our online GIS presence up to date. This is probably the most important way for staff and citizens to access our GIS data. And it was a priority for me to get something that was a more modern interface that had mobile device support, so that we could have users access our data by smartphone and tablet. Our existing relationship with our contractor AppGeo led us to their product called MapGeo. And so this is the platform that we have adopted to upgrade our old FlexViewer GIS application. It's a cloud-hosted platform. It's available to the public, and it has been customized to include Carson City's GIS data, which at this point we're, I think, over 100 different GIS layers that we've integrated into that system.
That's online now?
It is online now. It's available now, and it has some very nice integration with Google Street View. It's available for staff to access utility data. That's actually secured by login. So any sensitive data layers like our utility system, we can have login access for our staff to get there, but it still is open to the public to view property lookup and whatever other OpenGIS layers that they want to be able to see in that system. Right now, we're going through the process of putting together a training video for it, but I'm more than happy to provide any one-on-one training to run through this system, and we're getting the links switched over on our website as well. Something else I wanted to highlight was the support that we provided this winter for the EOC and for damage assessment. This started for me back in November when I published an interactive snowplow map. We've published our PDF maps for some time, but I wanted to give the citizens the ability to go in and interactively view our snowplow routes. And so it was a very quick exercise for me to get that out into our map platform for the public. But more so, the status map, which has been out there for over a year now, has become a really important public information tool for the city. It performed very well during the January and February flood events. It was linked by the press and social media, and it provided a real-time operational picture of what was happening around Carson City during those events. I've also configured a new damage assessment tool and deployed that during the February event. The tool is called Fulcrum. It allowed us to very quickly get staff out in the field to review damage reports and collect information on site, such as photos and videos and also preliminary cost estimates for the locations. And that was available to us back in the office in real time. And so it allowed us to quickly provide damage estimates to the Department of Emergency Management and to FEMA as well. And this is, it may seem like a smaller project, but it was a really nice one that showcased our capability of publishing in-house applications. So in December, I put out a cemetery viewer on our public mapping site out at maps.carson.org. And this is data that was collected in 2010, and it never had a way to get out to the public. We had an intern had gone out and GPSed all of the cemetery plots with the attribute information that went along with each plot. So to get this out there and available was really important, and now we're working with the Parks Department to upgrade their database that they store their cemetery data in and integrate it with GIS so that they'll have the tools that they need to go out and update and improve this data as we move forward.
Does that mean someone will be able to actually query it to see where someone's buried and go to the site?
Yes, so
Okay.
right now you can go in and there's some limited search capability by plot number, but part of this upgrade project that we're working with, they'll be able to search by name, burial date. There'll be a number of different fields they'll be able to search by. So last but not least, I just wanted to bring us up to date. This was a project that I just recently worked on, publishing a map of road closures for the upcoming Epic Ride event that's going to take place June 16th through the 18th. This was kind of a unique project because I was actually able to provide a code snippet to our information management officer, and she embedded it into the event page that the city hosts for the event. So this is a really powerful capability that we have, not only to publish these standalone applications like the cemetery viewer, but also to embed interactive maps into our webpage or into social media feeds as we need to. So I wanted to make sure to highlight that. So looking toward the future, we have a long list of things that we want to accomplish over the next fiscal year. Some of it will be accomplished by our professional services contractors, some by internal staff, and many of them by both. So here's the list of our top goals. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to highlight a couple of them, namely our GIS strategic plan and also our stormwater infrastructure mapping update. So in April, we began planning for a GIS strategic review with the goal of developing a GIS strategic plan. Such a plan hasn't been done for Carson City in over a decade. In consulting with Michael Baker International, they presented us with a 4-phase approach that would evaluate where we are with GIS, what we're capable of, and where we need to go with it. This process will be performed over a 3-month period and will include user questionnaires and interviews with city staff, and we're currently planning for phase 1 to commence around July. Another important task is the update of the city's stormwater infrastructure and GIS, which is long overdue. Much of the system is documented only in antiquated paper maps currently or in the minds of knowledgeable staff. So a pilot study is currently underway to define the level of effort required to perform a comprehensive stormwater update. The pilot study will conclude in mid-June, and the comprehensive update will be a priority project for us in the upcoming fiscal year. So accomplishing this task will put us in compliance with our annual state stormwater certification. And lastly, I'd just like to emphasize that the development and improvement of the city's GIS is part of our larger asset management initiative. GIS is the core asset management technology for Carson City. Strides have been made this last year in areas of asset inventory and condition assessment, specifically with city facilities and with the sanitary sewer system. The next goal will be further GIS integration with systems capturing condition assessment data such as our work order management system and also our sewer video system. Leveraging GIS-based solutions for performing those functions will allow a better spatial picture of where capital investments are needed using GIS analysis techniques like clustering and heat mapping. And having this capability will allow for the creation of real-time dashboarding solutions that can be used throughout our enterprise to allow for more intelligent CIP decision-making and better use of our taxpayer dollars. So with that, I thank you for your time, and Stephanie and I would be happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
I got to ask Supervisor Bonkowski if that's what he had in mind when he started asset management stuff a little while ago. This is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. I didn't know,
This is great stuff.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions of Stephanie or Matt? It's well done. Lots of good stuff there, lots of tools for people, one, to go play with, but lots of tools for professionals to take a look at what's going on in our city and keep up the good work. It's pretty snazzy stuff. And I don't mean that it's just good stuff. So, all right. Thanks. Good presentation too. So, okay. All right, let's take up, are we ready to do the second reading on the encroachment deal? All right. The encroachment ordinance?
Let's bring it back for the first reading.
We are.
All right, we're
October? November, October?
We're on item number 28, Charlie. This is on second reading, bill number 111, an ordinance amending the Carson City Municipal Code regarding encroachment permits for outdoor dining and merchandise display. Any changes since the first reading?
Thank you, Stephanie Hicks. For the record, there have been no changes since the first reading, and we have received no additional comments from the public.
All right, public comment on this? Anybody want to weigh in? Thank you.
Ordinance number?
All right.
11? Okay. I move to adopt bill number 111 on second reading, ordinance number 2017-11, an ordinance amending the Carson City Municipal Code Title 11 in order to add Chapter 11.35 regarding encroachment permits for outdoor dining and merchandise display in the Carson City right-of-way in downtown Carson City.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Good riddance.
Hip, hip, hooray.
Yep, hooray.
And Stephanie, I just want to say thank you for all your work on this. Appreciate it.
All right, you ready for redevelopment? Chair of redevelopment? We'll recess out of Board of Supervisors and going to go to redevelopment.
Moving on to item number 30, I'm going to call to order the Redevelopment Authority and let the record show that we have a quorum. And on to item number 31, public comment. Is there any public comment at this point in time? Seeing none, on to item number 32 and 32A, to amend the Carson City Redevelopment Authority policies and procedures. Lee, are you going to take us through this?
Yes, and good afternoon, Lee Plumwell, Community Development Director. I'll be taking you through these redevelopment authority items and then the associated Board of Supervisors items to follow. This first item is for possible action to amend the redevelopment authority policies and procedures section specifically relating to the funding of special events, or at least just a paragraph of the section that relates to the funding of special events. As you'll remember with the budget for next year, we had some discussion as we looked at funding going into the future for arts and culture special events versus other types of special events. I said I would look at the policy at that time. I knew if it was specific and needed to be amended, because we've decided, or you've decided, to deviate from this a little bit in terms of how we fund arts and cultural special events versus other ones. And that's with RAC's recommendation going forward is consistent with that as well. So it's been RAC's recommendation and staff's recommendation to bring you a proposed policy change to delete the specific number of 40% of special event funding and just say that you'll fund special events as determined in the budget each year. Now, there's been some discussion about, so it was $25,000 was the number that was set in your redevelopment allocation plan. So there's been some discussion whether or not you put that in the written policy, or I would say right now you have an informal policy based on your actions looking at that 5-year plan. We filled in the blank going across for the next 5 years that it's $25,000 in that. Of course, we would plan on bringing that back to you next year for your action on that, or you can put it in here. And the only thing I would say to that is that when it's in the written policy, if you do something different, then we got to come back and amend the policy to say something different. It's just a little bit of paperwork to do that. So it's up to you.
Well, just my particular comment on that, I feel like if we don't at least state a minimum of $25,000, that the possibility exists that no funding would happen for arts and culture. So, and I was under the impression that our board discussion was such that that was kind of the limit that the ground floor that we set on funding for arts and culture. So I'll let the board discuss this.
I think that was actually the maximum.
Okay, just fine.
Right. So, and I think Lee's point is that if we put a number in the policy, then it makes it a little more difficult for us to change that. Lee and I had some conversations about this because I had the same concern. If it's not in the motion or in the policies, then it could be the opposite. Arts and culture could get it all, and there could be nothing going to the other special events. So I think that that's kind of what we need to look at is, how do we want to divvy this up? We have one policy for arts and culture, which is that we want to have basically a minimum funding or a set funding amount so that we can get that program off the ground. And at the same time, we have a different policy on the other side, which is that we want to decrease and eventually eliminate special events funding because it should be seed money only. So under limited circumstances, we may fund seed money for 3 years on a decreasing level. Two very different policies, but the same pot of money.
Right.
So I'm really open to what you guys want to do on this because I'm not sure I have the answer.
Any other board comments on this? John?
Yeah, I like you, I didn't know that I wasn't looking at it as the floor or the ceiling. I was looking at it as a protective device, and I, on RAC, brought up the problem of, well, you can always change it later. It really is coming to us, so we're going to determine in the final analysis, not the committee. So I'd just say go with the 25,000, but that's just my preference.
Bob?
Well, listen to the debate here. I think it's a fascinating way of looking at that because but I think listening to this, the best approach you've got is to leave it the 25,000 across the board that's in the budget right now in their plan and let it go with that. And if it changes, we'll have to deal with that. But I think that expresses the will of what we're trying to get at here.
Lori?
That's it. I think the policy statement is broad. And I believe you want to go broad because then it would also allow us in year 3 or 4, we might want to put 30,000 because there's some special, let's say, pretend the powwow turns out to be just phenomenal. They're moving the location and we want to go the opposite way. So I think the broader statement gives us the budgetary authority to give more dollars if necessary, instead of having to change the policy before we can do that. So I think we should just leave the policy broad and let the budget do it.
Without specifying an amount?
Without specifying an amount. I think we have and I get what the concern is, you could get a different board that has a different philosophy, but they would always have the authority to change the policy anyway. Another board could come in and say, we're not going to give any to arts. So I see where you're trying to do it, but I think we made the right move, Karen, when we went to the $25,000 in the budgetary process to give them some solid funding. And so, I don't know, I think I like the broad statement better.
I think at the end of the day, you know, they know that the folks outside know, you know, that's what we've got allocated for that, and it's not going to go down that I know of, but I mean, it could go up, I guess. But I think, you know, listen to the debate here on where we are. My sense is that we're probably okay with leaving a broad one, and then knowing that our budget and into the long term, the 5-year plan for redevelopment funds is at $25,000. Leave that across the board. That's a pretty good statement of you know, our intent to go forward. So that's my 2 cents. So.
Okay.
Just weighing in on this a little more, and I don't like to extend things at all, but Lori has brought up the concern that I brought up, which is that any board can do anything it wants at some point. But that's one of the reasons I like it in there as a fixed amount, because then we can change it up or down. But the point, as far as I'm concerned, is you're giving a signal to those other event people that we're serious about having it come down and just be in the seed money. On the other side of that dais, when I would watch what was going on, RAC kept talking that game but didn't do it. Now we're doing it. And this really, I think you put the money in and the amounts come down on the other side automatically, then you've got it. You've got the signal to them that, well, we're going to have to go somewhere else. And we've been trying to get them to go somewhere else for a long time, or you have, I haven't. But that's the goal, so that's why I like the money.
And John, you bring up a good point, and that's my thought process too. Lori, boards change. And so this was intended to be seed money for a certain budget amount of budget cycle. And I think it's better stated than left to guesswork. That's my thought process. And
so you prefer to have a number in this policy right here? You know, and it would be, what would the number, I mean, not what would the number be, but what would you say it's a floor, a minimum?
minimum.
I think that's kind of where I am anyway, but I mean, as I look at that, you know, one is just a little bit more difficult to change than the other if you really want to go down the road.
Right.
But I get where you're coming from. I mean, I'm okay with doing that too. I mean, the idea I think is to let the arts and culture folks know, you know, what we're going down that road, and we're going to be allocating funds to make that happen. So, and then, you know, I guess we could tweak this to say, you know, put that in there, and also
To allocate $25,000 to the arts and culture? Is what you're saying to change it to? So we'd allocate redevelopment special event funding as done in the budget and $25,000 annually to the arts and culture? Correct. Is what you're recommending that change to?
That is what I'm recommending that change to.
So say it out loud.
It's the policy of the Redevelopment Authority to allocate special event funding, $25,000 to arts and culture special events as determined in the annual redevelopment budget, which may be independent from funding allocations for other special events.
I think you really want to say it is the policy of the Redevelopment Authority to allocate $25,000 redevelopment special event funding, which may be independent from funding allocations for other special events.
Okay with that.
So part of my issue is I believe in a policy side and then what you do. And so I don't think we should be specific in the policy, but I understand what you're trying to get to. But if you look at everything else that we're doing, we're taking specific fees and all of those things out of our codes because we want to be able to react more quickly. I don't think there's a danger, certainly, of this committee changing the arts and culture, but I do want to say that the other thing you have is the redevelopment will end. What do we have, 2034? So I think that, right, somewhere in there. So I think it's also imperative that I don't want the arts and culture group to get to count on forever there's 25,000, because at a point that's going to wane also. And so I just don't think we should do it at the policy level, but I understand your concern, but I think we should leave it in the budgetary.
Suppose you said something like this, and suppose you said it is a policy of the redevelopment authority to allocate a minimum amount of redevelopment special funding to arts and culture events, which may be independent from funding allocations for other special events.
You mean so it can't be zero? So it
Can't be zero.
I could live with that.
So,
So that, in other words, we're saying there will be an allocation. Okay.
Well, then you get me wanting to go back to say at least 50%. Because
Me too, John, but
I'll make a motion to that effect and see where it goes. If you're ready for a motion, are you ready for it?
public comment, first of all? Yeah. Is there any public comment on this issue? Mark? 100%. Of course there is.
Good afternoon, Mark Salinas, Director of Arts and Culture here for Carson City. Happy to be here today. Of course, I am very grateful for the discussion on this topic. I prefer the mention of the $25,000 because while I know the concern on the board is on how these organizations will utilize it, it helps me advertise it before it even gets to that level. This year we had 2 brand new applicants to the special events and a reoccurring applicant that brought a new program. So if I'm able to sort of wave the banner and say that our board believes in us this much to put ink to paper, I think that helps me before it even gets to the step. And there are guidelines that we're putting in place to make sure that seeds are sown and then they are weaned off. We just discussed some cap limits before, and I think I've mentioned that to the board here already. So I'm going more towards mentioning the $25,000 because I think it shows, while boards can change, I think it shows the community now that this board believes in it, and I can work with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any other public comment? The board.
I think we're all on the same page. It's a question of how you say this, but I'll say it is a policy of the redevelopment authority to allocate a minimum amount of redevelopment special event funding to arts and culture events, which may be independent from funding allocations from other special events.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there discussion?
So on discussion, I just want to say, if I look at our entire redevelopment policies, we don't anywhere in there indicate a specific amount for incentive programs, for, I just don't think we should do it. I don't think we should put a specific amount. We don't do it for facade programs. We don't, it's just not the right place for it. Again, I just don't think it belongs in that higher level document, so.
If I could, I think, Mark, speaking to your concerns, you don't have to come up, that, we go through the budget process 3-4 months before the fiscal year. So you're going to know what that number is in the budgetary process that you can hopefully use to go advertise for that next fiscal year. So hopefully that's a win-win for both of us. We can word this without being specific in the policy portion, but still give you what you need, which is the ability to know where you are at and to go out and use that information to advertise.
Could I offer a friendly amendment or maybe get it stuck back in my ear?
John, go ahead.
Where it says, which may be independent from funding allegations for other special events, which may be independent from and take precedence over funding allocations for other special events. They've had years of trying to wean themselves, and they're beginning to do it because they see the way things are going. I just want to send a clear signal that this takes precedence, at least through this, while this board is in office.
Instead of saying that, suppose you just said, it is a policy of the redevelopment authority to support redevelopment special event funding and to allocate a minimum amount to arts and culture for special events.
Period.
Period.
I like that better. I don't want to say precedence.
All right, we have,
Put the word support in there, support redevelopment special event funding.
He's so good, he didn't stick it in my ear, but he pushed it back in my face. Thank you.
I'm trying to trying to be Solomon, man, but I don't know.
The second will agree to that.
we have an amended motion. We have a second to the amended motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Do we need to reference the section that's in the proposed motion? Or are we okay with just reading it off the screen?
As long as it's on the record.
Okay. That's why we have you here.
All right. On to item 32B. To make recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding the expenditure of $10,000 from the revolving fund to support the fair. Now, I have a disclosure, and then I'm going to have to turn the gavel over to Lori, who's the Vice Chair of Redevelopment. And this disclosure will also apply to the other agenda item further on, 36A. That is NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. I serve as a board member on the Greenhouse Project Board, a nonprofit organization, along with Lindsay Chichester. I also serve on the Fair Committee, which Lindsay is heading up. The Essex Commission has opined that where there is a relationship that is substantially similar to that of a substantial and continuing business relationship, there exists a disqualifying conflict. Here, my relationship with Lindsay as co-members on the Greenhouse Project is similar to that of a substantial and continuing business relationship, and therefore, a reasonable person in my situation would be materially affected by this commitment, and as such, I will be abstaining from participating in this matter.
Mayor. And just so, I just wanted to mention that this has to be adopted by a 2/3 vote, and with Supervisor Aboud's, the board, I'm sorry. I'll wait till you get to the board, then I'll make that statement. Okay, so because Supervisor Aboud did have a legitimate abstention and she has a written legal opinion, then it reduces the quorum by one as if she did not exist on the board, and so you just need 3 votes.
Okay, so Lee, are you going to take us through this item, please?
Yeah, this is a special event funding request, and I would note we have some others on this agenda for the following year, which is in line with the application process we're going through. This is one of them that's under this current year's budget. So this is budgeted in the current year we're in. It's for the fair that's going to occur in July next fiscal year. However, it's for expenditures that are going to occur this year. So we were told it would need to be budgeted in this year. So the application is coming from this year's funding. There's $27,000 remaining in this special event budget line item available for this type of event. They're requesting $10,000 for advertising and the rental of some of the equipment that needs to be paid for in this fiscal year. as you said, the applicant's here to answer any further questions you have about it.
Lindsay, my check is in the mail.
Make sure it's the same amount or more than mine.
That's good. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back up to the board to accept a motion.
I move to approve and recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the expenditure of $10,000 from the fiscal year 16-17 redevelopment revolving fund to support the Carson City Fair as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan that has been adopted by the Carson City Board of Supervisors, and based on the findings that there is a causal connection between this redevelopment effort and the need for the expenses. The expenses are needed to ensure the success of the redevelopment plan, and that the amount of the expenses to be given are minor in comparison to the money required for the overall redevelopment plan.
Second.
Sorry. No further discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is 4 with 1 abstention.
Thank you, Lori. Now we're on to item 32C, and I do believe I have a disclosure for that as well, so I'll start off with that, and then Lee, you can take it from there. And this disclosure applies for 32C and the coordinating item 36B on both of these disclosures. Advocates to End I also want to disclose that I serve on the Sexual Assault Response Team and Administrative Group on which the director for the applicant, Advocates to End Domestic Violence, Lisa Lee, also serves with me. However, this working group is not a nonprofit or a private group. This is an administrative group for Carson City, and therefore I do not have a disqualifying conflict of interest, and I will participate in this matter. And I also want to disclose that Ben Steele, who is the CPA for the BAC board, is also my CPA for my personal business, and although I have a substantial and continuing business relationship with Ben, I do not have a substantial business relationship with the BAC, and therefore I do not have a disqualifying conflict of interest and will participate in this matter. All right, Lee, any other disclosures?
I do. I have the same disclosure with respect to the Mile High Jazz Band. Mile High Band's Jazz and Beyond, because my wife serves on the board of directors of Mile High Jazz Band. So I think I can still vote on that, or not? No?
Technically, no, because it's your spouse, and so that's,
I'm out.
it's not as removed as if it was
I'm out.
some other relationship.
I'm out.
Same,
Declare a conflict and abstain.
same thing with my spouse, I'm out too.
Okay, so then we have
We don't have a quorum.
2/3 of 2.
Oh,
2.
Oh, okay.
I can vote.
Oh, so we have 3. So 3, okay.
I'm going to try and talk my wife.
All right, Lee, if you would, take us through this.
Okay, this agenda item is to make recommendations to the board for the redevelopment authority to make recommendations to the board regarding expenditures for next fiscal year for special events within the budgeted constraints for within next year's budget, next fiscal year. So we've divided the pool into 2 categories. We have the redevelopment special events and then the arts and cultural special events. Up on the display there now are the applications that were complete and received for the regular redevelopment special events, for which a total of $30,000 was budgeted. We have applications from RSVP for the 4th of July fireworks in the amount of $7,500, and an application from Advocates to End Domestic Violence for the Taste of Downtown event in the amount of $6,500. As I mentioned, Mark Salinas is here to go over these arts and culture events were referred to the Cultural Commission. Oh, I should go back. Let me say what the recommendations are. So these two, the RSVP, the 4th of July celebration, Taste of Downtown, were reviewed by the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee. The recommendations, their recommendation for funding is in the right-hand column there and highlighted in yellow, which is the full funding for each application. The arts and culture special events that were forwarded to the Cultural Commission, they made their recommendations, again highlighted in the right-hand column there, shaded in yellow. They include the outdoor Levitt Amp concert series from the Brewery Arts Center, the Carson City Arts Initiative season of arts events around town, Mile High Jazz Band Jazz and Beyond music series in August that they annually put on, Sierra Nevada Ballet's Peanut Cracker, again an annual event in the community center, Sierra Nevada Ballet doing Sleeping Beauty this year in August, Community Yogi, which is a community yoga event series, requested funding, and the films Friends of Carson City Library are doing International Film Weekend in February 2018. And again, I won't go over the detailed amount. They're in your packet there. The recommendations are highlighted on the right. And again, Mark is here to answer any specific questions you have on any of these applications.
Thank you, Lee. Board, any questions? No? All right, public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring this back to the board for a motion.
I move to approve and recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the expenditure of $37,800 from the fiscal year 2018 redevelopment revolving fund to support various special events in support of the redevelopment district, which includes up to $23,800 to support arts and culture events as recommended by the Cultural Commission, and up to $14,000 to support other redevelopment special events as recommended by the Redevelopment Authority Citizens Committee as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan that has been adopted by the Carson City Board of Supervisors, and based upon the findings that there is a causal connection between this redevelopment effort and the need for the expenses are needed to ensure the success of the redevelopment plan, and that the amount of the expenses to be given are minor in comparison to the money required for the overall redevelopment plan.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And one abstention. Oh, two abstentions. Excuse me. Two abstentions. All right. Okay. All right, on to 32D.
Okay, thank you. The next two items are actually regarding expenditures from the same redevelopment account, which is budgeted at $20,000, and we have two $10,000 expenditures requests. This first one is a request for $10,000 for the purchase of chairs for the community center, which include these chairs to finish out the rest of the building so we don't have to have the plastic chairs in here. And also some new tables for the community center, which I understand with them, they're used for special events, but the actual new chairs will displace the older ones that are here now, so the older ones can be moved out and get banged up elsewhere. Dragged around, sure, yeah. Eric Klug from the community center is here to answer any questions you have about this application for Parks and Rec, and be happy to answer any questions myself.
Thank you, Lee. Board, any questions? Any public comment with regards to this item?
I do have one comment.
Okay, Brad?
I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge the church that donated the current blue upholstered chairs that we have. The city did not purchase those. They were donated, and I forget the name of the church. Do you remember what it is?
Eric Klug, Recreation Program Manager. The church was Ponderosa Baptist Church.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to publicly thank them for the chairs.
All right, any other comments? And I've asked for public comment. Is there any further public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Sure. I move to approve and recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the expenditure of up to $10,000 from the fiscal year 27 redevelopment revolving fund special event equipment account for the purchase of chairs for the community center and tables for the community center and special event rentals as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan that has been adopted by the Carson City Board of Supervisors, and based upon the findings that there is a causal connection between this redevelopment effort and the need for the expenses. The expenses are needed to ensure the success of the redevelopment plan, and that the amount of the expenses to be given are minor in comparison to the money required for the overall redevelopment plan. Boy, that's a mouthful.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right. On to 32E.
The next item is, again, an expenditure of $10,000 from the special event infrastructure account. This $10,000 would be used to purchase an outdoor projector. To talk a little bit more specifically about this, there's information in your packet, of course, but the idea has been thrown out there for the last couple years as we developed the plaza, when I first heard of it as perhaps having a movie night, having a projector that's capable of showing movies for the public if there's organization could put that together. Could also be used for events. And I learned recently from Sina Lloyd that they've actually had requests for this type of thing in the past. And I will note that Sina's here from the library, Joel Dunn from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and also the RAC assigned a lot of work to Garrett Lapierre to go track this down and coordinate with all these different departments and the Parks and Rec department to get all the equipment together, and to put a program for managing the equipment. So to talk about a little bit the management of the equipment, the Visitors Bureau has agreed to purchase sound equipment, which I think was estimated at about $5,000 from what I heard from Joel, maybe a little bit more than that. It would be assigned. Parks and Rec has an inflatable screen that can be used. It's portable, it gets moved around, they use it, but it would be available when not in use for the community center as part of this rental, and then the library would manage the whole thing like they do other technology now that they have at the library. So they're all here to answer questions. You have a bit of late material that wasn't included initially, but Sina provided a little more detail in the equipment management process that they use. So hopefully that answered a lot of your questions, and we're available for questions at this point.
Thank you, Lee. I'll open this up to the board for discussion.
Sina, in fact, all three of you, if you can come up, please. While you're walking up, I'll just give you my concern, which is in this age of technology, I find it hard to believe that there's not a better quality system that is not as notoriously fragile to use to show movies. So convince me that a projector is the way to go, and that there isn't some HD Bluetooth method out there, system, that we could use to do the same thing much better.
So the projector I'm sorry, Garrett Lapierre for the record. The projector allows for more uses than what other technologies, that I'm not aware of other technologies that would do this. The reason that it's a daytime projector is the lumens become a little bit higher, although Eric would be a good person to talk to because he knows this stuff like the back of his hand. But the uses that you can use with the projector, you can project it onto sides of buildings, you can project it onto screens, you can project it onto a bunch of different things. So the utility and use of that, I think, is a little bit better than maybe some of the other stuff that's out there.
Thank you, Eric.
Eric Klug, Recreation Program Manager. So really in the AV world, to be more robust is going to be an LED wall, and they're going to be expensive and labor intensive.
How expensive?
Depending on the size, they'll be around $100,000 or more. And the other thing that'll raise the price too is, depending on the distance that you need, you'll need a small millimeter. So for Bob McFadden Plaza, you'll probably be looking at about a 5 millimeter wall, which will raise the price quite a bit.
And what that is, for the layman terms, because I don't know it either, is a wall of TVs. You take TVs and put them all together, and that creates one screen. And there again, you have some worries about transporting a wall of TVs that, maybe it gets busted up, maybe it doesn't.
There are also different, Sina Lloyd, Library Director for the record, there are different projector technologies that are more durable than, let's say, your just general, probably, I'm not sure what these are, but if it has a standard bulb in it, that bulb can break easily, whereas a laser projector, it is more durable, and so it's less likely to require that maintenance.
Yes, my question is, Garrett, in sitting on the redevelopment committee, what were the thought processes in terms of possible usages for this particular piece of equipment?
So, my goal was to bring some infrastructure to the downtown to allow for the creativity of different groups to put together different events, enhance events that we have, and also bring new events to that downtown core. So I have a group that, if this all goes well, will bring a special event permit to create a family movie night downtown on the plaza. Epic Rides, I don't know if they'll get to it this year. We're a little late in the game, but they have to have the ability to live stream what happens on the mountain down to the plaza. So you could be sitting at Firkin and Fox, or sitting on one of the benches down there and be sipping a beer while watching the screen, watching the mountain bikers race up on the mountains down on the plaza. You could do that with different events, live stream from, you could live stream one of these meetings down to the plaza. I mean, you could do a lot of different things with live stream there. But being able to do it in the daytime, you can't start a family movie night at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. You got to start it a little bit earlier, and that's why the cost is so high. Is those daytime projectors just cost a whole lot more.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I will say, having just gone through a strategic planning for the Visitors Bureau, one of the main recommendations was family-friendly events. So this does allow for that latitude.
I have a question. And I don't know, maybe this would go to Lee because nobody's here from Parks and Rec, but this is redevelopment money for redevelopment. Can this projector be used in other locations? Did I hear you say that at some point?
So these special events, this is part of the reason why you make these findings with approving these fundies per the policies that are actually happen to be attached in this packet, but that there's a causal connection, and you're furthering the goals and plot policies of the redevelopment plans. So predominantly, these special events are occurring in the redevelopment district. Certainly they are here, they are downtown, South Carson Street. But in this case, yes, it would be, you would be allowing the public to have access to these, to use them anywhere.
Well, that's good, because as I understand it, from one of our board members, it's actually a casual connection. So, but just to get serious for a minute, I did have one constituent come to me and say he proposed an idea for a movie night in Sonoma Park, which is a large park, and I don't know whether that would ever fly, but I just throw that out there for our recreation staff. You are with Parks and Rec, so.
Yeah, and I would note that Jennifer did, there's, besides this equipment, which may not actually handle that size of venue, I think, Jennifer Budge was talking about, actually, she's borrowing some equipment from Washoe County that's for that larger type of event in the park that our Parks and Rec department is planning for this year. So we could still do things like that too, and that might not be this equipment, it might be something else, but yeah, Parks and Rec is working on those as well.
Lori, Brad?
They also have to have a special event permit, though. And with the special event permit, insurance is required, correct?
Correct.
So that then would insure the piece of equipment too, because they're renting that from us or getting that from us? Does that mean their insurance will cover the loss of the projector if they were to break it?
Generally, I would assume that that does. I don't know that if Lee has any additional information on that, but.
Well, the special event insurance when they're on the public right-of-way is liability insurance. And I actually don't know absolutely that it would cover replacement of the city equipment that they're renting from the city. Although, yeah, we talked a little bit about that and the ability to recover. I mean, if somebody they sign a waiver, they sign a waiver coming out, I believe, is what happens, and taking responsibility for it.
Yes, so they would be required to have a Premier Library card, which you do agree to specific terms and conditions above and beyond a regular library card. That's how we check out digital equipment. And then when they actually check out that equipment, they'll be required to have training prior to checking out that equipment. When they check out that equipment, everything will be made sure that it's in working condition. And then when they check in that equipment, everything is made sure it's in working condition. And they assign to both of those so that if it does come back not in working condition, then we can charge them for whatever might be wrong with it, whatever repairs that something may need to have.
So do you require a credit card on file such that, you're covered?
We do not, but we do have the ability to take somebody to collections if necessary, and we work with the Friends of the Library to ensure that our digital equipment is up and running so that if something did happen, we would still be able to have it up and running while that process was taking place.
Brad?
Eric, what medium are compatible with the projector?
It's going to be based on the brand and the model. The one that I saw the specs for Douglas County, it'll be HDMI, VGA, and composite, so SD and HD, but not 3D compatible.
So when people are using this, they're paying for a license and then they're streaming the material through the projector, or are they getting a disc, or what is it? What's the physical form of the media?
It's going to be whatever player you hook up to the projector. You can DVD player, laptop, whichever. So, but they'll have to pay for the license.
Well, I was thinking 35 millimeter. And then my final question is, do we have to look at both city use and public use, or could we restrict the use of the equipment to just city use? Where I'm having trouble is I really think we're going to run into trouble when we rent this out. It's going to break, and then number one, we're going to be putting ourselves in the position of trying to collect thousands of dollars from somebody who probably doesn't have it. We've been in that situation before, and then we didn't do what we were supposed to do, so the taxpayers end up footing the bill. So I just want to make sure that we all have an understanding of what we're doing and that we're willing to follow through on any enforcement activity, and I'm not sure that we are. So convince me again. I'm still not convinced.
I know, yeah. Would these groups rather the city put it on? Yeah. Would they rather have the city employees go put that up and take the equipment down and pay for the $500 movie? Yeah, they would. Oh, but it's all a money thing. That's where it all boils down to. And I think what you're going to see is a handful of users of this thing. People are going to be scared. They don't want to break that. They don't want to have to pay for that. But you're going to get a handful of people who use this technology and use it over and over and over for the events that they put on, which is going to decrease the risk of them breaking it or not. Hey, there's always the factor. That could happen. There's no doubt about that. There's no sugarcoating that. There's no way to get around that. But it boils down to either the city puts on movie night, or they allow the infrastructure to allow the public to put on movie night. And either way, we're happy with both.
Well, we actually have a third choice, but Joel, you're being way too quiet over there. So,
for the record, Joel Dunn, Executive Director of the Visitors Bureau. So my buy-in to purchasing the audio component of this package that would be utilized for special events is for that side of it, the special events. Right now, I inundate the city and their staff, and I spend a lot of money through the interlocal agreement for providing audio component for a lot of special events that already come into our community. Nearly every special event at some form is going to ask for the equipment supplied from Parks and Recreation for the events. The utilization of this $6,000, $5,000 to $6,000 for the audio equipment, if it also provides then the opportunity for the event promoters to look at streaming, which we have received a few requests. The latest was actually not only Epic Rides, but from the wrestling tournament that was held at the MAC the last 2 years. They wanted to stream the mats inside the facility. I believe that it would minimize my financial contribution in the endorsement of the special events. It would minimize the amount of work that the Parks and Recreation staff would have to provide to supply the equipment. When the library stepped up to say, listen, I think we've got a better component to be able to manage and operate the checkout, I'm still in either way. Even if the city was to look at limiting the use of this equipment, if we were to consider the special events that we're filling out the permits and I was endorsing those events, I would be comfortable still participating and purchasing the audio component.
Can I ask a question out of ignorance? Is there any way to ask some of these organizations you're talking about, Garrett or Sina, for a performance bond, not a performance bond, but a bond to get it back so that it's covered rather than insurance?
We could, that is very possible. We could also, one of the things, you have special event insurance. If they're already getting special event insurance, they can probably also take a rider out to get insurance on that piece of equipment.
That would probably limit the number that would do it, but at least it would give us some protection.
I would agree with that. I think that if we can mandate that there's insurance through a rider on, and if we limit it to special event permit, special events and not to the general public, then I think I could support this under those conditions. I just don't know that I can support it if the general public is going to be allowed to use it.
Garrett, just a question that crossed my mind in terms of using it for special events. It makes sense. How do we know what is being shown?
Good question.
So if it's a special event, you have an application, you've got some paperwork to follow through with this. And so that's just kind of my follow-up to this. I think that if it's a special event, there's a set of paperwork and you have to fully describe what it is and the event and so on and so forth. If it's not attached to a special event, there's no monitoring.
I think the policy states that you have to have a special event permit to check it out. So you would know what they were doing. Real quick, let me add in, if this goes through, there's a group that will donate a 20-foot screen in the next 60 days to this as well. And I was approached by someone with the Boys and Girls Club wanting to put on one of their fundraisers using this projector as well. So it gives you an idea of what some people could do with it.
Thank you.
So to add to the conversation, I will commit, if the board makes the motion upon submittal of insurance, either on behalf of the rentor or the special event promoter, I'll also add to that I'm pretty confident if it becomes problematic to get the special event promoter to cover the equipment, I more than likely could have in any of those endorsed events have this equipment listed under our policy.
Thank you. I feel better about that. All right, motion? First of all, is there any other public comment on this? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board.
I move to approve and recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the expenditure of up to $10,000 for the fiscal year 2017 redevelopment revolving fund special event equipment account for the purchase of an outdoor projector for permitted special events as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan that has been adopted by Carson City Board of Supervisors, and based upon the findings that there is a causal connection between the redevelopment effort and the need for the expenses. The expenses are needed to ensure the success of the redevelopment plan, and that the amount of the expenses to be given are minor in comparison to the money required for the overall redevelopment plan.
And requiring insurance.
I think it's required under the special, that's why I put permitted special event.
It only has liability
Yeah, it's only
insurance.
liability.
So
Where we
it just
need
says
equipment.
includes
Okay,
equipment insurance.
Then the first part of the motion would read, I move to approve and recommend that the Board of Supervisors authorize the expenditure of up to $10,000 from the fiscal year 2017 redevelopment revolving fund special event account for the purchase of an outdoor projector for permitted special events with
Required replacement insurance?
with what is it, general property insurance? With
Just say appropriate insurance to cover that.
with
yeah.
appropriate insurance, yeah, that's
Get us
fine,
out of the
that's
way.
fine. With appropriate insurance to cover the damage or loss of the projector as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan, yada, yada.
There you go.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Good motion, yada, yada. You got that?
We got both of them.
All right.
Both yadas.
All right.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
I just want to say thank you to Joel Dunn for making this happen and purchasing the stereo equipment. Thank you for that, and for Sina for all her hard work of putting together a policy and procedure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. We're on to item number 33, public comment. Seeing none, item number 34, possible action to adjourn is the redevelopment authority. And we will move on to item 35.
We're going to reconvene as the Board of Supervisors. We're going to take up item number 36 alpha. This is in possible action to adopt a resolution authorizing the expenditure of up to $10,000 for fiscal year 2017 revolving fund for the redevelopment authority to support the Carson City Fair and expenses incidental to carrying out of the redevelopment plan. As part of this, we will incorporate by reference all of the discussion before the redevelopment authority that was just had, and that includes incorporation by reference of any conflict disclosures and abstentions, of which I believe there are 2 on this one. So that means that this has to be adopted. If we're going to adopt it, it has to be adopted by two of 3 of us here. So with that in mind, any additional matters to come before the board on this matter that we didn't discuss earlier that have been incorporated by reference? Okay,
No, sir.
motion's in order. John, do you want to do it? Anybody want to do it? Who doesn't have a disclosure? Who doesn't have a?
I don't.
You don't?
I move to adopt Resolution 2017 R16, authorizing the expenditure of $10,000 from the fiscal year 2017 revolving fund of the redevelopment authority to support the Carson City Fair as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan.
There's a motion, a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Abstain.
Supervisor Abad abstain? She's an aye here, okay. So we needed 3 at least on that one? And one abstention, so vote is 4 with 1 abstention. Let's take up 36B. We're going to do something similar here. This is to adopt a resolution authorizing the expenditure of up to $37,800 from the fiscal year 2018 revolving fund of the redevelopment authority to support various special events in support of the redevelopment district as an expense incidental to carrying out the redevelopment plan. We will incorporate, as before, we will incorporate all the discussion that we had as members of the board, as members of the redevelopment board, including incorporating by reference all the disclosures and abstentions. And I think there are 2 of us that have to disclose on this one. And I'm one of them, so I'm going to pass the gavel back to the Mayor Pro Tem, Supervisor Abad, and she can take the motion, if there is one.
All right. So if there's no public comment, I will bring it to the board for a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 2017 R17, authorizing the expenditure of $37,800 from the fiscal year 2018 revolving fund of the redevelopment authority to support various special events in support of the redevelopment district as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. And 2 abstentions and a unanimous vote of 3.
Okay. Okay, we're going to take up item 36, Charlie. This is to adopt a resolution authorizing expenditure of up to $10,000 for fiscal year 2017 for the purpose of purchasing chairs at the community center. This is the same type of matter that we had under the redevelopment authority. So we will incorporate by reference all the matters that we discussed under the redevelopment authority, including the thank you to the church that donated the existing chairs we have in the Sierra Room and all other discussion. And I don't believe there are any disclosures or abstentions on this. So unless there's further discussion or further public comment on this matter, any public comment? I don't see any motions in order.
I move to adopt resolution number 2017 R18, authorizing the expenditure of $10,000 from the fiscal year 2017 revolving fund of the redevelopment authority for the purchase of chairs for the community center and tables for the community center and special event rentals as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan.
Okay. So, on the motion and second on the motion, discussion. Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, let's take up the ones we did before in the redevelopment authority first. Let's go to 36 Echo and move over to 36D. We'll take that up next. Let's do 36 Echo. That's to adopt a resolution authorizing expenditure of $10,000 for fiscal year 2017 for the purchase of an outdoor projector. We'll incorporate by reference all the matters and discussions, including the motion for approval that the redevelopment authority had, which dealt with permitted special events and sufficient insurance to cover the loss or damage to the projector. Any further public comment on this matter? Any further board comment? Seeing none, motion's in order.
I move to adopt resolution number 2017 R19, authorizing the...
20. That's on the agenda.
Skipped one.
He skipped one.
I move to adopt resolution number 2017 R20, authorizing the expenditure of $10,000 from the fiscal year 2017 revolving fund of the redevelopment authority for the purchase of an outdoor projector for events as an expense incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan.
Second.
On the motion, further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried, unanimous. Okay, now we'll take up the $1.165 million that was discussed in an earlier meeting during the budget matters. Lee, you want to take us through these real quick for the record, please?
Yeah,
Or not
just-
real, you don't have to be real quick, just take them through.
Sure. These are items, again, approved by the redevelopment authority in the redevelopment and budget for fiscal year 18. All expenditures from the revolving fund require approval by resolution of a 2/3 majority of the Board of Supervisors. So in addition to these other discretionary funds that you've just made some authorization for those expenditures, these are other items that are annually in the budget, or, well, there's a couple new items on here, but these are budgeted items that also require the resolution for their expenditure. They include the Nevada Day Farmers Market, Christmas tree lighting, Epic Rides, reimbursement for city cost of that downtown event, for year-long special $25,000 to Public Works for all the special event street closures throughout the year, $480,000 for the annual Michael Hull incentive, $170,000 for the Richard Campani incentive, $160,000 for the sales tax reimbursement incentive that was previously awarded a few years ago for a couple of properties. And then the other one that is $250,000 for downtown improvements, and that's in conjunction with the Curry Street, some of the other side streets downtown. This does not, after your action today, this does not, there's still some funding that would still need to come back to you. For example, utility extension program. There's other items in the budget that aren't authorized for specific projects yet that would still come back to you, but these are in here, and we bring these to you as a group every year for action to authorize these expenditures. So I'd be happy to answer questions.
We've got a lot of lights up here.
Maybe they're the same question.
Let's go, Supervisor Bonkowski was had his light on first, then I think Supervisor Abad, then we'll go this way.
Nancy. Hello. The $160,000 sales tax reimbursement incentive program, Bell's obviously is closing, but this is on a reimbursement basis. So for this particular item, for this year, the $160,000 would stay static. But next year, there will be an adjustment if that space isn't backfilled with another tenant. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah,
Yes,
and
that
we've
is
just,
correct.
we just.
The way, yes. It's 15-year term, doesn't matter if there's any vacancy. So it's reduced.
Of the vendor.
It's not, I have the contract right here. It's for the 15-year term for the space. And if there's a vacancy, then the reimbursement goes down because they're not generating the sales tax dollars. But if they backfill it in that 15-year term, then they would regenerate the sales tax and be eligible for that reimbursement.
That's correct. We just paid, so we make the payment to the Carrington Company, and we just made the payment for 2016, I think it was last month.
That was done by the, it was a large, you had to have 15,000 square feet, right? Wasn't that it?
No, it was for the 72,000 square foot
Yeah, but
space.
at least a minimum of 15,000 square foot that went with the property. I mean, it was the large space
For sportsmen and girls.
Right.
redevelopment incentive that was done, and it was attached to the property like that, just as you said. So that's how that got happened.
All the other spaces in the mall were excluded. It was only that space, which ended up being a 42,000 and a 30-some thousand square foot space.
But can they chop up that space, or does it have to be the whole? That's, I guess, maybe where I was more going. They can't make 5 stores in that space.
The revenue sharing agreement shall only apply to tenants of those portions of the vacant space that are occupied by a tenant that is operating within the deadlines provided by this agreement. If one or more of the tenants on the participant property decline to exercise their lease options and no replacement tenant occupies that portion of the property, the RDA's participation payments to the participant will automatically decrease on a pro rata basis. The participant may execute and record this OCA for the benefit of the RDA, blah, blah, blah. In consideration of the participant entering into this OCA, the RDA and the city agree to participate in a revenue-sharing covenant with the participant for up to 15 consecutive years, commencing 1 year from the first monthly sales tax report from the tenant. The consecutive years shall run without interruption or stay regardless of any vacancy on the property.
And along with that agreement was a map specifying the space that it's talking about. So, but to directly answer your question, it could be, like it was split up, it could be split up into multiple tenants, but it only applies to a specific space within there. There may be some minimum area limitations as part of it, but it is mapped as part of the agreement.
Yeah, unfortunately, we limited it to that 72,000 square foot space, but I don't think we thought about it being demised into smaller and smaller spaces. So I didn't see anything in there that limits the amount of square footage.
Started in 15?
15, yeah.
Third, right.
Yeah.
I know, because I remember we had extensions or something because they couldn't get a rent, or that's, okay.
All right, John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this. Almost all of this was done before I got here, and I want to honor what's been done on the city's part, on the city's behalf in the contracts that we've made. But I just want to put people on notice. I don't like much these things, and I probably won't be there if we go here again for future things like the one we just talked about and the auto dealerships, et cetera. I would hasten to add, the mayor's right, the auto dealerships had to be done back when they were done originally.
So just for a comment purpose, on the Epic ride, there's a report that's required in that contract, if we could get the copy, to know whether we want to keep on appropriating it. So I'm with John, we already have an agreement that we need to honor, but it has an annual appropriation requirement, so for the future, we can have the report.
Okay. All right. Public comment, anybody?
We wore them out.
Wore them out? You know, people put the hard things towards the end of the agenda, the controversial ones, for this reason. And that's why you got to be careful with these things. Okay, all right. Motion's in order.
I'll make it. I move to adopt resolution number 2017 R19, authorizing the expenditure of $1,165,000 from the fiscal year 2018 redevelopment revolving fund to support various events and incentives as an expenditure incidental to the carrying out of the redevelopment plan.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, all right. I have just a quick follow-up question on that one. There's, on the Christmas tree lighting, there's a thought going around that maybe we want not to do a city Christmas tree, but just do the big tree lighting ceremony at the Capitol because it is, and because there's some concern about safety issues walking up the street in the dark. Anybody have any problem with, you want to keep the city tree going or not?
Well, the only thing I'd like to...
The lighting part, but keep the whole rest of the program, you're saying.
The lighting of the tree, I get that, Mr. Mayor, but I would just like to point out, not to advocate for it, but you do the, we don't, but
Empty bowls.
we do the empty bowls project right there as well. So, I mean, you're still going to have people walking up.
Yeah.
All right, let me think about that then. Okay. It has nothing to do, and it's not.
I mean, we could still not have the city Christmas tree lighting. It is a little anticlimactic, if you want my honest assessment. After we do all of Carson Street, we go up and do our little tree.
All right, if anybody has any strong feelings on that, contact me later, or contact the city manager. All right, let's see here. 36 Foxtrot, okay, or 36 Final. Okay, this is on second reading to establish the Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District Assessment for fiscal year 2017-18 for the maintenance of downtown streetscape enhancement project. Any changes from the first reading, Mr. Plemmel?
So per your action on first reading, there was a change to one property. We did not change the assessment of any others, but that change that was made on first reading is reflected in this ordinance, and we've received no further input regarding it since first reading.
Okay, public comment? Seeing none. Motion's in order.
Ordinance number?
2017-12.
I move to adopt Bill number 112 on second reading, ordinance number 2017-12, R12, and ordinance related to improvement districts establishing provisions to levy the Downtown Neighborhood Improvement District assessment for fiscal year 2017-18 for the maintenance of the downtown streetscape enhancement project and providing other matters properly related therereto.
Motion and second on the motion. Discussion?
I'm sorry, yes.
Ready?
Just want to correct the ordinance number to 2017-12, not R12.
It's not a resolution.
Got it?
Yeah.
All right. We all clear on the motion? Discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, we're on concluding public comment. Anybody? Let me just say on concluding public comment, I want to thank the board and the staff for a long agenda today. These things don't happen very often, but when they do, they just happen. Things come up like this. So I want to thank everybody for bearing with us, particularly the board here, because we've had a long day. We've been going since 8:30 this morning, straight through. It's what democracy is all about. So the Marines, you know what? You tried to put us under, and here we are still afloat. How's that?
Hoorah.
Hoorah, come on. That was a real enthusiastic hoorah. All right, anything further come before the board? Hearing none, unless there's objection, we're adjourned.